Okay, in this video, I'd like to continue where we left off in our last one, talking about the 5 roles that play a key factor in Active Directory. These are going to be called the FSMO roles. These roles are going to be responsible from everything from the authentication process to the users that are created to replication throughout the domain. We'll jump into those real quick. I'll do another example within Active Directory, and we're going to talk about those roles within the operating system. So as we can see here, we have our 5 roles here. These are going to be our FSMO roles, as mentioned before. Your schema master, that's going to be responsible for your read and write copy of your Active Directory schema. The schema is going to be things such as your phone number, your email address. Those are considered objects within Active Directory, and those are in a schema form, and that particular data is transferred throughout the domain to the other domain controller. So your schema master, the server that actually holds that role, it's kind of like your phone book. So it'll be responsible for letting other people know about those particular objects, about your identity. Your domain naming master is almost kind of what it actually sounds like, which is it's responsible for also ensuring the names on the domain, as far as making sure there's no duplicates, also no duplication of the domain name itself. Even when you look at things like a child domain or anything like that, the naming master is responsible for making sure there's not a duplicate of that, even your name. So if you try to name 2 objects within Active Directory the same thing, that particular role is responsible for ensuring that there's not another object in the domain with the same name. But then it goes a step further. It says, well, if that fails, we have what we call our RID master. A RID master assigns SIDs to these. These are security identifiers. These are just unique identifiers to ensure that if one thing fails, so if we name something the same, we have a unique identifier that gets assigned to each one of those objects. And that also ensures that neither one of those objects within Active Directory are the same. So that's going to be a role held by your about a server in the domain, by a domain controller in the domain for that matter, that's going to hold the role of the RID master. And then we have our PDC. This is mainly responsible for the authentication process within Active Directory. So if this is down, you'll actually get a message of, I'll give you an example. This would be an example. A trust relationship between the workstation and the primary domain controller has failed. So whenever there's a problem with the PDC, that'll be the message that your end users will get, and that's telling them that that primary domain controller that holds this role is having problems. So if this is having problems, you definitely want to go into AD and possibly start moving that role around to another working domain controller on the network. And once you bring that server back online, it'll recognize, if the server is recoverable, it'll recognize that it's no longer the PDC anymore. And then it'll know that your secondary server is now the PDC, and it will move on with life. If you have to seize this role, if that server goes down, you'll have to use a command line tool to actually do that. It's going to be called netdom. So you'll use that particular tool from a command line to actually seize that role. And that's going to be for when the server is never coming back online. Let's say you can't restore it from backup or anything like that. You're going to actually seize that role to get your environment back up and going as soon as possible. And then you have your last role, which is going to be your infrastructure master. This is responsible for taking the GUID, the SIDs, the names, all of those things, and replicating those things back and forth. This is going to be more or less the blueprint of the network. So it's just your infrastructure. So with that being said, just kind of an overview, I will encourage you to definitely go out to the link here listed below from Microsoft. And this is going to be on the FSMO roles. Definitely familiarize yourself with these. At some point, you will have to do this. these things will fail. You're going to have a server within your environment. It's going to fail. Again, one of the reasons why we put two servers as a domain controller, and there will be times where organizations will have hundreds of domain controllers because they're going to be in different locations around the world. But even with all of those servers, even if we have 100 servers, we can only have a sub number of servers holding these roles. Now we can spread these roles out. There's only 5 of them. If we've got 100 servers, 5 of those servers can only hold one of these roles. So you could have one of those servers holding all 5 of these, or you could spread this out amongst 5 servers. But that's all that you'll have. There can only be one. There cannot be 2 RID masters. There cannot be 2 operations masters. There can only be one. Okay. All right, and so with that being said, let's jump into an example, and I want to show you where these actually live within the operating system, in case you have to go in and move these things around. Okay, now that we're back over on the server that we just joined to the domain and promoted as a domain controller here, we're going to jump into Active Directory, and I want to actually walk through and show you where these 5 roles are actually held. And you can only get to 3 of them from within Active Directory. And so within Active Directory here, you're going to right-click on your domain. You're going to go down here to your Operations Master. So from here, you would think from the example we gave before that it just says Operations Master. So you would think you would just be going to the one, but it's actually all 3 roles. So you can see here, here's our RID Master, our PDC, and our infrastructure. So again, PDC is going to be for our naming. And so again, if we were having trouble out of this server and we needed to change it, we would select change here. And it asks here. So you can see here at the bottom, I'm going to hit no. You can see here at the bottom, it's going to change it from this to this. So if you were over on this server here, this would actually show this server in the bottom. So this is saying this server here, Lab 02, Lab AD02, knows about this as its master. So if we were over on this server, and let's connect to there real quick. We're going to change domain controllers, and you can do this up here at the top. You can actually see here, if I hover over this, it tells us which server we're on. We're on AD02. So we're going to right click and we're going to change domain controllers. We're going to select AD01, say okay here. Now we're over here on AD01. We're going to right click on here. Going to go to Operations Masters here, and you can see here, it actually says itself here. So same thing for PDC. Same thing for infrastructure. So that's the reason why we have to do this from another domain controller. If we say change, it'll say, more or less, you can't transfer the role to yourself. So this is why we have to do it from another server. So we're going to right click here. We're going to change domain controllers again. And we're going to select this one here. And now we're back over here on test AD02. So now if we go back down here to the domain controller, go back down to Operations Masters, we can see we're back to here again. So in this example here, if we wanted to go to the PDC and we wanted to transfer this role, we could just select change, and it asks us, are we sure we want to? Great, this role has been changed. And we'll actually see this when we run through a command line example to actually show these roles. Okay, so as I said before, here's our infrastructure master. So you might ask, where are the other roles held at? There's only 3 here. So for that, we have to go to, we can go back over here to our server manager here, and we're going to go over here to domains and trust, and we're going to select it. So from within domains and trust, you're going to right click here, and you're going to go right here again to Operations Master. And so this again here, ask us, do we want to change this role? And so this is going to be for this particular role here. And so now if you wanted to change it here, you would just select change, and that'll change this particular role over as well. You'll get a prompt here. Are you sure you want to change Operations Master role? And you can say okay to here if you want to. We'll go ahead and say yes here. Our server is working fine, but we're just spreading roles and things around. And you might say, okay, again, okay, that was 4 of the roles out of all of them. We found the schema, we found the domain naming master, we found the RID, we found the PDC, we found the infrastructure. Now you might ask, where's the schema master at? Well, for that, we have to go through and register a DLL in the registry in order to see that. And the reason for this is because this role is hidden, because it's definitely the most important role that you're going to have on the in your domain environment. So this particular role is actually hidden. So you have to do this from the command line. So we're going to right click down here at the bottom, and we can either choose command prompt, or we can just type CMD here from the run command. For this, we'll go ahead and choose command prompt. And as you can see here, my command prompt came up as administrator, but if it didn't, I could have right clicked here and said run as administrator. Because of this command that we're doing, we're actually registering a DLL, is the reason why we'd have to do it there. Okay, so this is the command we're going to want to run to actually register our DLL. And the reason why we're registering this is because we're going to have to go in what Microsoft calls the management console. You've probably heard me mentioning that word a couple of times, or snap in. For that, we're actually going to right click here on start and go down to run, and we're going to type MMC from here. And so this is going to be our Microsoft Management Console. All of your consoles within Windows are built off of this. So you'll always see this little red toolbox at the bottom. So if you go into Event Viewer, or you go into Performance Monitor, things of that nature, you're going to always see this little toolbox down here at the bottom. That's going to be because it's a Microsoft Management Console. So from here, we're going to add a snap-in. So we're going to click on File, Add Remove Snap-in. You can see here, we don't see our actually schema here at all. We can see that there are other things here related to Active Directory. We can see domain controller, domain trust. We can see here users and computers. We can see sites and services, things of that nature, certificates, but we don't see anything related to a schema. So we're going to go ahead and say cancel here, go back to our command prompt, and we'll go ahead and hit OK here. And we're going to register that DLL. We'll get a prompt here in just a moment. It takes a few minutes for this here to register. Give it just a moment. There we go. There's our pop-up there. Now we're going to say OK here. We're going to go back into our MMC console, add remove snap-ins. And now you can see here is the schema master here. So we can go ahead and say add here, select on OK. It tells us here, once we select it, tells us here at the top here, you can probably see as I'm hovering over it, it says, I'm going to expand this out just a little bit for us. And we can see here is our schema master here. So if we need to change our schema master, first thing we're going to do here is connect to schema master. And that's going to take just a moment to just connect it. Now we're going to go down here to operations master again. Remember, it's the operations that's happening. And here again, it asks us, do we want to change it? In this case here, we're still connected to that server. So again, we're going to say change, and it's going to argue at us and say you can't change that because it's going to the same server. So we'd have to connect to another server from here. We connect to a different domain controller and seize this role. I'm not going to do this for this role here because it's a test environment that we're actually using. But otherwise, you would just change domain controllers, select number 2, select OK. Now we just changed it from there. Right click again, go into operations master, and the same process as we did before. We would select change here, and it would change it to this server. So that's all we'll do here. So for this, we're not going to change our role. So we're going to go ahead and also too, whenever you close out of your snap-ins, if you think you want to actually use this in the future, you can say yes to save this, and you can save it to a location, and then you can add it to your tools. So if you want to always go here, and you want it already loaded, you can give it a name, and it'll already be there, and this will be your name for this particular snap-in, and it'll just kind of be a shortcut for you. But in this case here, we don't need to save that. We know how to get there. Go ahead and close out and say no to saving. So now we want to actually just kind of query what those roles are. For that, we're going to use NetDom. So we can use NetDom for quite a few things. Just spell it right there. We can use NetDom for quite a few things. I would encourage you to actually go out and do research to actually see what all you can use this for, because it's a powerful tool, and you're going to use it a lot throughout your career. As you're administering the different environments for troubleshooting. You won't really use it for anything else, really just for troubleshooting. So as you can see there, we're actually going to query the FSMO role as we had in the slides there. So now what it's going to do is going to actually go out, gather the information from the PDC, and tell us who actually holds these particular roles within the server environment, within the domain environment right now. So it takes a few moments for it to go out and query this data. So you can see here now, we did change those roles. You can see here's our schema master. It's going to be the server here, which is AD01. And you can see here, our domain name and master is O2, PVC is O2, and the other two roles are being held by the O1 server. Okay. All right, and another quick tip too, whenever you're using a computer that's on the domain, you can also type a set command to actually see the server that actually logged you on. So you can scroll back up here to your logon server, and you'll actually see the server that actually processed your logon. So if there was another domain controller within the environment, and the primary server was having problems. Again, here, this server was able to log itself on because, well, it's a domain controller. But if there was a down level computer that was logging onto the network, you will actually do the same thing, and you'll be able to see which server actually logged it on. And that'll actually let you see some redundancy within your environment. Okay, we just logged on to our other client computer, which is going to be our test lab oh 01 here. And in this particular example, we're going to actually see which server logged us on to the domain. And for this, we're going to bring up the command prompt. Once we bring up the command prompt, we're going to type in the set command again and actually be able to see what was the server that actually logged us on to the domain. So we can scroll back up here. We're actually going to look for our logon server. And so you can see here, this was a local logon. And so if we would have actually logged onto the domain, it actually would have showed right here. Okay. All right. So hope this was very informative for you. And again, I'd like to thank you for viewing. And we'll continue on to the next video.